Well, first, I want to thank Ruby Central and RubyConf organizers for having me. Hello, I'm Mina. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a software engineer at a consulting agency called Tandem, and I have been for roughly 4 years. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm over at the RubyConf Discord server and Twitter. So I came to this startling realization recently that I no longer fall into the category of early career and had quite the existential crisis. An experience that sparked this presentation, managing out strategies for leveling up. And I'm here to share my experiences leveling up, both practically and psychologically, and how I gained the skills and mental readiness to progress as a mid level engineer and beyond. So, in January of 2020, the project that I had been staffed on for over a year got a contract extension. This extension expanded the team considerably. We more than doubled the number of engineers, bringing on people of varying skill levels, including new project leads. This change in team makeup affected how I fit into it, practically overnight. I was in a fairly unique position where I was not in an official leadership role, having finished my apprenticeship right before joining this project a year prior. But I was also the longest tenured engineer on this team at just over a year, which was a long time relative to other tandem projects. So I had more code base and client familiarity than a lot of my teammates. Essentially, less than 2 years into my second career as a software engineer, I became a person that the team counted on to be self sufficient, as well as provide support and guidance to my brand new team. I felt uneasy to be thrust into this pseudo leadership position where I had opinions but no real seat at the decision making table. At that stage of my career, I still had a lot to learn, but I also had enough project experience to support my team. So I struggled with what I should be focusing on. I wanted to continue to grow as an engineer, both technically and as a team player. I wanted to support my new teammates the best I could, and I wanted to continue to provide value to this project. And being the overachiever that I am, I wanted to do all these things at the same time. Through a lot of trial and error, I did manage to come up with ways to thrive in this position. They fell into three general categories: set good examples for the team and model collaborative behaviors, be creative in ways that I share knowledge and use existing tools to achieve new goals, and embrace the role, take ownership and initiative. Now, by focusing on these strategies, I managed to come out the other side a more confident engineer and a more empathetic teammate, all while helping to take this product successfully into production nationwide. Every team has a set of processes that makes it the most productive. When new members join a project team, they have to learn the way that the team works. And there are so many different ways to share this information, like through documentation or verbal explanation. So I remember in school that whenever we had a writing assignment, my teachers would always tell us, show, don't tell. So I opted to use my actions to show my new teammates our existing processes rather than using directives. I was worried about coming off as condescending, and leading by example felt more appropriate for my position on this team. Now, actions leave a deeper impression because the impact of the behavior was more obvious. Rather than talking about theoretical benefits of doing things a certain way, We could find opportunities for pair programming or collaboration so they can see that we are a team that works together. Or we can be open about asking for help early and often to convey that expectation and empowers others to do the same. Now, after spending so much time on this project, I realized that I held in my head historical information and context about past decisions. This realization surprised me because I was used to being one of several people who knew these things, but most of them have since moved on to other projects. Suddenly, I looked around and I was the only person left. I have worked with people who hold information very closely to themselves and resisted sharing with the rest of the team. And I knew that this was not the type of leader I wanted to one day become. So I reminded my teammates often that I'm always available to answer their questions, to pair with them, or be a rubber ducky. I also listened closely during daily team syncs to what my teammates were working on and how it's going. I try to pick up any uncertainties or blockers that the team might be facing, and I offer to help where I can, emphasizing that I didn't always know the answer, but I was always willing to collaborate to work through it. This is also an opportunity to identify if any context or previous decisions needed to be shared. Our project had a long history, and there were a lot of implementation ideas that had already been explored. For example, a new engineer might not know that we had already done a spike previously to investigate whether we should raise errors using the GraphQL gem or let Active Record handle it. And we decided ultimately that Active Record was better suited to our use cases. So their time might be better spent somewhere else, solving new problems. Taking the initiative to suggest pairing together opens the doors to collaborating with my team. When I was an early career engineer, I had often needed help working through a task, but I was too afraid to ask my team for it because I didn't want to, quote, bother them. I was always relieved when they offered those. So once I stepped into a more experienced position, I made sure to be the one to speak up, giving my teammates a chance to take me up on the offer to pair without them having to ask first. Pairing with the team was not solely for their benefit, though. I am a proponent of pair programming as one of the best ways to learn. It allowed me to practice various technical concepts and be exposed to different styles of code so that I can improve upon my own. For example, a couple of the new engineers picked up a ticket that would really benefit from being remodeled using single table inheritance. I had been introduced to this concept on the project previously, but hadn't really used it, and they had never heard of it. So we spent some time working together and improved the extensibility of the code. In introducing the two of them to I gained a better practical knowledge of it. Explaining concepts like this to my new teammates solidified my knowledge, and I was surprised with how much I actually knew about Ruby and Rails. Another place where we can flex our technical muscles and gain confidence in our own abilities is by participating in code reviews. A number of my new teammates joined our project without knowing Ruby. So even though I wouldn't call myself an expert, I was still able to provide insights about the language, like Ruby implicitly returns, so you don't need any of these lines here. As a reviewer, I tend to approach PR review as another opportunity to collaborate with my teammates. I try to be thorough in my review, reading the code changes and testing the functionality carefully. I provide both compliments and critiques with empathy. I like to think in the feedback framework ask, which stands for actionable, specific, and kind. And I offer to pair after I've made a complex suggestion to remove any potential for miscommunication. And if you're interested in hearing more about giving and receiving code review, I gave a talk about it at PyCascades last year. Now, by setting good examples for my team and using my actions to model collaborative behaviors, I grew as an engineer and deepened my own understanding of Ruby by teaching those who were new to it. I supported my teammates by providing technical guidance through pairing and code reviews. And I added value to my project by making sure that we had a consistent process. When these expectations are clear and the team are up to speed on them, we work more efficiently and deliver better quality code. Now, as a part of our onboarding process to the project, the new engineers got a quick demo of the application, as well as a high level walkthrough of the code. While these were valuable for understanding the bigger picture, in order to implement a new feature or improve functionality, we needed to dig deeper for more specific details. Now, instead of saying things like everything you need to know is in the code, I use tools to I use tools built into our workflow to better share information about the code base and help my teammates be more productive. For example, I contributed to implementation discussions by adding two ticket descriptions on our Jira board. Our leads and product manager created the tickets and filled in business requirements, but it's usually up to the engineers to translate those into implementation details. Our goal as a team was always to have a common knowledge, shared resources, and enough information in the descriptions that anyone could pick up the tickets and be ready to work on it. Everyone on our team was more than capable of finding their way in the code base. Being new to a project or coding in general, though, might mean that we take a few more detours along the way. The information that I add to the description of a ticket was meant to be the beginnings of a roadmap, pointing generally in a direction toward implementation. It was never so detailed that it dictated how they implemented it. They were always framed as suggestions rather than you should statements or directives. And it can be as simple as take a look at this model. It might be related to this task, or we have an established pattern here that could be really useful for you, and tell them where to find the examples. At the end of every sprint, we come together as an engineering team to go over the planned work for the next sprint. This is where everyone will look through the information on each ticket and discuss the details. This is also where we would decide if a ticket needed to be broken down into multiple, smaller tasks to make implementation and code review simpler. In these meetings, I always made sure to ask questions and raise any red flags or edge cases. This is an area that I very specifically worked hard to improve. When I was starting out, I kept pretty quiet in these meetings because I didn't process new information about code or the client's business as quickly as I do now. By the time I formulated a question in a conversation, everyone else had already moved on. But I observed the more experienced engineers around me with their thoughtful questions and comments until I learned how to think like an engineer and understood what is important in different conversations. And I wanted to empower the team by exposing my own knowledge gaps. It's important to set an example for my newer teammates and demonstrate how to contribute in these discussions, like my previous teammates did for me. When early career engineers see someone more experienced admit to not knowing the answers, It sets an example. And as this tweet says, it normalizes admitting gaps and demonstrates how to respond. By using creative avenues to spread knowledge to the rest of the team, I grew as an engineer because speaking my understanding allowed others to challenge me. Incorrect assumptions don't survive very long in the open. I supported my teammates by helping them move past square one when staring down a new task. And I made sure that our requirements fulfilled the needs of the client by thinking over edge cases and considering the risks. At the beginning of this presentation, we talked about the trouble that I had reconciling my project experience with my actual role on the team. That while I held the most context, I wasn't in an official leadership role. But eventually, after a lot of introspection and mentorship, I decided to embrace it. Someone smart told me once that we don't always lead from official positions of leadership, that there were plenty of opportunities for learning and practicing leadership skills, whatever our titles might be. So I started taking initiative and served almost like a second in command for my leads, who were spread pretty thin. The time and experience I had on this project moved me from early career solidly into a mid level engineer. And in this new and scarier place, I realized that when I get an idea or identify a specific need to be filled, I should take action. As I become more experienced as a software engineer, fewer people will chime in and tell me what I should be doing. My leads expected me to be self sufficient and to rally the team into a productive one. No one was going to tell me what the project needs because I was becoming that person. So I started doing things like writing documentation that other people didn't think of, or volunteering for small process related tasks. When we were onboarding all the new engineers to the project at the beginning, I realized that we really dropped the ball on having clearly documented processes to introduce somebody to the project. So, as we fumbled through the onboarding process at the beginning, I started creating documentations for the next time that we have to onboard someone new. The goal was to create a one stop shop for everything new engineers need to ramp up, as well as clear instructions so that anyone on the team can lead the onboarding process. Now, writing documentation isn't an engineering team's favorite part of the job. So I made myself the person who took these tasks on with the intention to prevent the team from getting into a similar situation. Now, that was the moment that I really settled into this new stage of my career. Rather than waiting for someone else to do the thing, I took responsibility for it. I also volunteered to take on various small tasks, things like managing pair rotations. We were a pairing by default team. That meant each ticket on the board would be picked up for implementation by two engineers. In order to spread out the knowledge and make sure that pairings are fair, we had a bi-weekly rotation that lived in the spreadsheet. Now, this may sound super simple. All you got to do is fill in the cells with the name of each engineer on the team, rotate the names sprint to sprint so that everyone had an assigned pair that changes every 2 weeks. However, there are a number of things to consider that requires a little more thought, like vacations or who might already have knowledge in the planned work. Managing this spreadsheet was a task that didn't require a lead's experience and skills. By taking it off their plate, they would have more bandwidth to handle the really important things, like managing the roadmap, prioritizing client requests, and coordinating with designers and product managers. Essentially, I assigned myself the role of Commander Riker to my leads, Captain Picard, and I delegated the smaller tasks for them. As a result, they didn't have to perform any of these tasks, nor did they really even have to worry about them. In a way, I magically disappeared tasks from their plates. By really taking ownership and embracing the position I was in, I got to practice leadership skills from a less demanding or risky position, laying the groundwork to one day take on the role officially. I gave the engineering team an alternative person to look for leadership, who had maybe more availability than the leads. And I was able to ease our leads load and let them use their expertise more appropriately. In the end, I recognized that I was incredibly privileged to be in that unique position where I had the knowledge and experience to step up without the demands of being a project lead. I set examples for my team in order to solidify process and convey expectations. I shared project knowledge with my new teammates using tools that were built into our development workflow, making it more organic and less condescending. And I eventually embraced my position and got the chance to practice leadership skills in preparation for the next stage of my career. My initial confusion about where I fit into this new expanded project dynamic gave me the motivation to find or create opportunities so that I could get the most out of it. I worked really hard using these strategies to build trust with the client and stakeholders, as well as the people on my team. Right now, I'm getting ready to take over as the official project lead for another client, and I have never felt more prepared. You might already be doing all or some of the things that we talked about without considering the benefits that you're providing to others or that you are receiving yourself. When we act with more intention, we'll grow tremendously from even the most basic day to day interactions. Thank you so much for choosing this talk. I just want to take a moment to plug a couple of my good friends who are also speaking at this conference. Make sure that you check out Mercedes Bernard's Minimize Your Circus Factor on how to build resilient teams, and Stephanie Min's talk, The Intro to Abstraction I Wish I'd Received. And if you like what you heard and want to come work with us at Tandem, we are hiring senior and principal engineers as well as an engineering manager. And we have an apprenticeship program that I would love to talk to you about. Enjoy the rest of your RubyConf.